We're learning in the schos of a refuah shlema kreva for Harav Yaakov Tuvia ben Chava Gittel. If you have a Chumash and Rashi, you might want to bring it closer. You don't need it extensively, but it's always good to be able to see it, even for a few minutes. So, Seif Aleph, B'Parshasenu Mesupar, Shemesha Rabbeinu Bikesh Meisa Kadosh Baruch Hu Hareini Naz Kvodecha. Our parsha tells us that Moshe asked of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to see your glory. And obviously the Torah tells us that Moshe was zeichet to speak to Hashem, panim el panim. So this has to be something different, something of a different order. Veheshiva HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem replied, Leisucha liros es panai goyme, v'ra'isias acharai ufanai lo yiro. You will not be able to see my face. You will be able to see my back, but my face you will not be able to see. Va'al hatevois v'ra'isa es acharai, and on the words, and you will be able to see my back. Perish Rashi. Rashi explains, Rashi comments. Herahu kesher shel tefillin. Hashem showed Moshe the knot of his tefillin. B'tzarech lahavin, we have to understand. In Yanei shel perish Rashi al Torah hu lefarish pshutei shel mikra, right? Rashi stated mandate is to explain the simple explanation of each verse. Mahu hakaishi kan b'pshutei shel mikra shechriach es Rashi lefarish acharei hainu kesher shel tefillin. So what exactly is bothering Rashi here? Ma kosher Rashi. What compels him to explain that the word acharai, which literally means my backside, is the kesher shel tefillin, is the knot of tefillin? Ve'ein lo yimar shehuksha l'Rashi haketzad ro'i l'nkoi toyar acharai klape mayla me'ach shekadosh baruch hu mufshad mikol tzir. And you cannot answer that what compels Rashi to comment in this manner is that the term acharai is just not appropriate vis-a-vis Hashem, because obviously God is divested of any physical aspect. But the Rebbe says, but you can't, that can't be the reason why Rashi feels compelled to comment in this way, for a few reasons. Because there are numerous places in the Torah where there are physical, corporeal attributes attributed to Hashem. V'lo matzinu sherashi dan bazeh umevar asher me'achar shel shayach linkoi toyarim ke'elu klape mayla al kein ein haperish b'zeh k'pshutei ela haperish hu kach v'kach. And we don't find that Rashi applies the same metric and says, well, it's not possible that you should say about Hashem such and such, therefore it means something else. In other words, anthropomorphism is ubiquitous in the Torah. You find it over and over and over again. And Rashi never feels compelled to say, oh, well, this is code for something else. And like we see in this part of the Torah, in this cluster of psukim, right here we see, Le'el Nemar, earlier it says, Leisucha liros es panai. Hashem says, you will not be able to see my face. V'Rashi leikasav me'uma levaris aperish depanim l'mayla, and Rashi doesn't comment at all to explain what panim means when you're talking about Hashem. Ubehechrach loymar, so we're forced to say she'ein ze inyan sherashi oisek boy beperushay ala Torah. So we're forced to conclude that that anthropomorphism is not something that Rashi deals with in his commentary. V'im kain, madua huzrach Rashi lefarish mahu achayrei. And so, if he's not bothered by what Hashem's face means, why is he bothered by Hashem's back? But there's more. Ubiyaser yuksha. But there's something that is even more difficult to understand. Im amnam zehu mashu huksha kasha l'Rashi ala pasuk And let's say that this is anomalous, and Rashi in general does not deal with anthropomorphism, but here he is very bothered by this, and he wants to explain what acharai means when you're talking about Hashem. So as the Rebbe says, "Ech mituretzes hashela bezeh sheherohu kesher shel tefillin." So how does Rashi's comment here answer the question? If you want to say that this is actually the question of Rashi, he's bothered by how you can attribute a term like the back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how is his comment an answer? Halay kesher shel tefillin, af hu davar gashmi, sheba kimashal ala chayrai dekvaydas yisbarach kimavor b'mfarshim. Because the knot of tefillin is also a physical thing. And it is also obviously metaphoric. The imkain, and if this is so, mahu harevach me'ahezbar leben chomesh she'achayrai einoi kipshuta kevan she'etel kadosh baruch hu lo shayach shum toyer gashmi ela koi al kesher shel tefillin. So what was gained? In other words, the ben chomesh lemikra, whether chronologically 5 years old or the person who is starting to learn and wants to understand the pshat. So what was accomplished here by Rashi saying that the back of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, oh, well, actually it's not his back, it's the knot of his tefillin, because that too is a metaphor. That too needs to be unpacked. So now the Ben Chamish Mikra, instead of having to unpack one thing, has to deal with two things that are metaphor. Va'adarabba, on the contrary, if in fact it was necessary to find some kind of mashal, some kind of analogy to explain to the 5-year-old what Hashem's back is, azay hamashal miponim va'achar shel bnei adam lamata, shepnei adam hamakim sheboi niris begilui ma'alasei chushav v'io shmiya b'chulei. Sorry, but I kind of had to read all that to explain. So the Rebbe says that if you're actually trying to explain this to somebody who needs, let's say, more rudimentary explanation, then it would make sense to stick with panim and achar, stick with the words of the pasuk, because they are actually pretty explanatory. Face, everybody can understand that face is kind of explaining a situation where you can see in revealed fashion something about this person. You could see what they look like, you could see their ability to see and hear and so on and so forth. Whereas the back of a person is kind of, they are eclipsed. It's very plain and simple and oblique, and you can't see anything specific or special about them. So if we take away the brackets, let's go back. Azai hamashal miponim va'achar shel bnei adam lamata kal lahavona habe yoser min hamashal dekesher shel tefillin. So if you would just stick with the words of the pasuk and understand that obviously it's an analogy, it's anthropomorphism, it's not meant to be taken literally, it would be much simpler to understand that Hashem says to Moshe, no, you cannot see my face, which is a greater level of revelation. You could see my back. That's much simpler than to unravel what does it mean, the knot of the tefillin. Ubefrat shebemashal zeh oisam hatayarim. And specifically because it's understood in this context that panim va'achar is a mashal, and now the only thing that Rashi has done is put another layer of mashal on a layer of mashal already. It seems just making it more complex rather than paring it down and making it more simple. Gam tzarek lahavim b'lashon Rashi. We also have to understand in the specificity of what Rashi brings down, Madua he'etik min apasuk gam tevas vira isa. In the Dibur HaMaschil, in the words that preface Rashi's commentary, the words of the pasuk, he includes the word vira isa. And this is a chiddush of how the Rebbe learns Rashi. conventionally it's understood that those are just, random words, and then Rashi gives his comment. But the Rebbe explained that the words that are in the Dibra Maschil are part of Rashi's commentary. So why does he include the word hera'u, that Hashem showed him, when it would seem that Rashi is just addressing achorai, the back? So why does he have, why does he bring down from the pasuk Vira Isa, you will see? And then in his commentary, why does he bring down the word hera'u? In other words, he could have just brought down achorai, and then in the comment, kesher shel tefillin. But Rashi includes in the Dibra Maschil Vira Isa, and then in his Perush, he includes hera'u, he showed him. Halo Chidush Rashi, who rak b'negei l'tevas achar. What Rashi wants to be mechadish here is only on the word achar, the back of Hashem. V'hayaloi lichtay b'kitzur achoray kesher shel tefillin. The back of Hashem, my back, is the kesher of tefillin. But no, Rashi writes herahu kesher shel tefillin. Hashem showed him the knot of the tefillin. Those are the questions on the Rashi. Beis. V'habir bazeh. And the explanation. Koidem mana kadosh baruch hu l'Moshe al bakashasai hareini naz k'vaydecha. Before Hashem replied to Moshe's request, when Moshe said, please show me your glory. So before Hashem said, "Leisucha liris is panai goimer," that you will not be able to see my face. Earlier, Ksiv, it says, "Vayomer ani avir kol tuvi al panecha." Hashem says to Moshe, "I will cause to pass all of my goodness upon your face. Dikarasi b'shem Hashem lefanecha v'chanaisi, and I will call in the name of Hashem before you, and I will show you grace, etc., etc." V'rak achar kach ba amira noisefes, and only afterwards comes something additional where Hashem says, "Loi sucha lirois," you will not be able to see. So if you have a chumash, please let's just look at this very quickly. Pasuk Yudches in Perek Lamed Gimel. Pasuk Yudches, Moshe says, Hareini na es kvodecha. Please grant me a vision of your glory. And Hashem answers in Pasuk Yudches, Ani avir al kol tuvi al panecha. I will cause all my goodness to pass before your presence. Dikarasi b'shem Hashem lefanecha, and will proclaim the name Hashem in your presence. V'chanoisi is asher achain, and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious. V'richamti, and I will be compassionate as asher arachim, to whom I will be compassionate. Then in Pasuk Chaf it says, Vayomer, and Hashem says, Laisucha lirais es panai, hilo yirani ha'adam v'chai. You cannot see my presence, my face, for no man can see my face, for no man can see my presence and live. So the Rebbe says, Mahi hashaychus ha'amira harishona lebakashas Moshe hareini nas kvodecha. Essentially, what is the connection between Pasuk Yutes and what Moshe asked for in Pasuk Yudches? Moshe asked to see Hashem. Hashem, instead of going directly to Pasuk Chaf and saying, no, you can't, but I will tell you what I will do for you, first Hashem says, I will cause all my goodness to pass before your presence, and so on and so forth. So Perish Rashi, Rashi explains. So let's look at Rashi on Pasuk Yutes under the words Ani Avir. Rashi says, Higia Shah, the time has come, Shetire Bechvoidi, for you to see of my glory, Masha Arshe Oischa Lirais, that which I will allow you to see. Lefi Shani Reitze V'tzarech L'lamedcha Seder Tefillah, because I want and need to teach you the order of prayer. Kishenitzrachta levakesh rachmim al Yisrael, for when you will need to ask for mercy for Bnei Yisrael, hiskarta lischus avos. I'm sorry, when you needed to ask for after the Cheta Egel, you reminded me of the schus avos. Kisabor atash im tama schus avos. You thought that if the merit of the avos were to be exhausted, ein oitikva, there would no longer be any hope. Therefore, ani avir kol midas tuvi lefanecha latzor va'ata nasum b'mara. Therefore, I will cause to pass all the attributes of my goodness, the Yud Gimel midas harachamim, before you, while you will stand concealed in the cave. Okay, so now let's go back into the Sikha. But wait, one more thing, and let's look at the next Rashi. V'karasi b'shem Hashem lefanecha l'lamedcha seder bakashas rachamim af im tichlas chus avos, so as to teach you the order of asking for Hashem's rachamim, even if the merit of the avot were to be exhausted. The seder she'atarayasi, and in this order that you see me, mu'utaf, wrapped in a talis, v'kaire yud gimel midas, while proclaiming the 13 attributes, have a melamed as Yisrael lasis kain. You should teach Bnei Yisrael to do likewise. And by mentioning before me all of my attributes, including the merciful one, the gracious one, they will be answered. Because my mercies are never exhausted. Vinimtza. So the Rebbe says we find that when the Eibishter says you will see my back, einay inyan nifrod. This is not something separate. Elahu hemshach le'inyan da'avir kol midas tuvichule. But it's a continuation of what Hashem says in Pasuk Yutes. I will cause to pass before you all of my goodness. Sheri'iyas Moses HaKadosh Baruch Hu mu'utav v'kairei. That Moshe, seeing Hashem wrapped in a talis and calling these names, Mamshicha, Al Yedei, Uba L'dei Bitoy Ba'ofen Shel V'Ra'isa Esachayre. So seeing Hashem's back is the full expression and is drawn down through this seeing the back. That what does it mean to see Hashem Ma'utaf in a talis and saying the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim? This is going to come to fruition. This is going to come to expression. This is going to be drawn down in the words V'Ra'isa Esachayra, you will see my back. Gimel. V'al pizeh, so based on this, Eina move on Perish HaPasuk V'Ra'isa Esachayra. So what does it mean? It's not understood. It's not readily understood. What does it mean? You will see my back. Because Hashem had appeared to Moshe as shliach tzibor, as one leading the prayers, wrapped in a talis. And what Moshe saw was only after Hashem passed, meaning only the back of Hashem. Im kain eze inin shel tira b'chvoidi al kapanim ba'ofen deriyas as a chayrai hayakan. So what exactly transpired here? What expression of seeing Hashem's back, which is seeing Hashem's glory, transpired here? When you look at a person from the back who is wrapped in a talis, the talis completely shrouds and eclipses the person that is wrapped in the talis. So what exactly did Moshe see? What is this? What is this referring to? Exactly what facet of Moshe seeing the glory of Hashem it comes to expression here if Hashem is covered in a talis, and a talis completely hides the person that's in it. And the Rebbe says in the brackets, Ilu talis mibadim miyuchadim. If you were talking about a garment that was made out of some very special material. Al derech bigdei kahuna shahayu lechavod uleteferes. For instance, as the bigdei kahuna that were made for the Kehanim and the Kohen Gadol, and they were made specifically to add glory and splendor to the wearer. Haya ulai nitan loymar sher iyas kvoida b'yosem uta betalis haya re'iyah b'chvoida yizbarach kevan sha'atalis haya lechavod uteferes. So if it was made out of some type of spectacular or very specific type of material, then you might be able to say that the talis was seeing Hashem wrapped in a talis, was seeing a vision of Hashem's glory, of Hashem's kavod uteferes, that somehow the talis accentuates and highlights and broadcasts the glory and the beauty of Hashem. But we don't find anywhere any kind of condition that a talis has to be made from very specific, very special, very expensive materials. But on the contrary, Minig Yisrael, the custom really is Minig Yisrael Shatayrahi, the custom which becomes Torah is Shatalis Hashliach Tzibor Nasis Mitzemer, that the talis is made out of wool, Ubefrat Lefihem Meforshim, and especially if you go according to what our commentaries teach us, that the term talis b'maimer Chazal zeh kibe shnayim oichazim betalis. Very, very famously, we have in the Gemara, two people are holding on to a talis. Ub'mamari Chazal b'chlal, it's levush. And the way that it's understood in the Gemara, it's understood as some kind of garment. Two people are coming to Beis Din, two people are holding on, Shnayim Eichazim Betalis, they're both holding on to the talis, and each one is saying, it belongs to me. It's not referring, talis in general is not referring to some kind of spectacular garment, something that would showcase the beauty of the wearer. On the contrary, it seems to be very everyday, very pedestrian. Rashi, and so Rashi comes to answer this question, which is exactly in which way is Hashem showing his glory to Moshe more than on any other time if he's showing his back as he is wrapped in a talis. Lahefach, it would seem that it's an eclipse of what Moshe may have seen at other times. So Rashi answers to this question, Heira'u kesher shel tefillin. What does this mean? Raya oisim utaf. First of all, Moshe saw Hashem wrapped in his talis. Hainu, loirak b'talis, elagam b'tefillin. That the word utaf doesn't just mean, in this case, wrapped in a talis, but also in tefillin. And like the 5-year-old knows, shalifamim hashatz me'utav betalis bilvad. Sometimes the shliach tzibor is wrapped only in a talis, like on Shabbos and Yom Tiv. Ulifamim betalis tefillin, and sometimes in talis tefillin. U'Moshe ra kesher shel tefillin, shemekoymei hu me'achayrav shel adam. And Moshe saw the tefillin, the knot of the tefillin, which is in the back of the person. And now the Rebbe says, now we can understand what seems to be an extra word, both in the Dibur HaMaskil and in Rashi's comment. V'lechein hutzrach Rashi lahadgish herohu kesher shel tefillin. And that's why Rashi wants to underscore the word, he showed him the kesher of tefillin. Or like in the Dibur HaMaskil, v're'isa. Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing himself to Moshe as he is wrapped, so if you're following the logic here, right, in some anthropomorphic way, Hashem is showing himself to Moshe wrapped in a talis, so the talis must be covering the knot of the tefillin. V'im kain, keitzad ra Moshe kesher zeh. How does Moshe see the knot of the tefillin, which is like by the nape of the neck, but the talis covers that? Bal zeh kasav Rashi, her ohu kesher shel tefillin. Shakadosh Baruch Hu kavyachal hifshil es a talis. Hashem, as it were, lowered his, he uncovered his talis, b'makayim zeh, in this place, v'hera leMoshe es hakesher, and he showed Moshe the kesher of his tefillin. Ubameh miskayemes al yedei re'iyas hatefillin shel ma'ila re'iyas kvoda yisbarach. And so how is this showcasing of the knot of the tefillin a revelation of the glory of Hashem? Zois ein Rashi tzarich leva'er. This Rashi does not need to explain. This Rashi does not need to articulate. Ki davar zeh roya gam haben chamish ba'atzmai. Because this, even the 5-year-old understands and sees by himself. And what is that? That hatfilin shel roish munachos al haroish kekeser hamakiv es haroish. That the tefillin of the head lie on the head like a crown that encircles the head. V'lachein yesh bahen inyan shel yakar v'kavod. And therefore, tefillin automatically is related to something that is precious and glory. And we know famously, we just passed Purim Katan, which means that Purim is on its way for real now. And when we say we know that Chazal teaches that Yakar is tefillin, and that's why the Megillah is read, Dafka, wearing tefillin, etc., etc. So the Rebbe says, Rashi doesn't have to explain to the Mechamesh what it is that Moshe saw in this revelation that's unique and unparalleled, because this is the only time, it seems, that Hashem showed his tefillin. And tefillin is always connected with and a manifestation of glory and preciousness. V'zehu shadiek Rashi herohu kesher shel tefillin. And now the Rebbe further kind of drills down on the words of Rashi and says, not just tefillin, but the kesher shel tefillin. Loy haritzois, not the straps that hang down. Afal pisha haritzois mishtal shlois min hakesher shel tefillin vehein aruchos mimenu. Even though the ritzois, the straps, they are connected to, they devolve from, they come down from the knot of the tefillin, and they are, of course, longer than it. And so even from the back, you might be able to see them more than you would see the knot. And like we see on a person in this world, that sometimes the knot is actually covered by their yarmulke. In contradistinction, the ritzuyas are easier to see. They hang down and they go further down. But the Rebbe says, what's the inyan of the kesher? Ki hayais hatfilin shel reish kizer v'cheser, because the tefillin are like a crown, like a tiara or a crown, umemele inishal kavod, and therefore it is something having to do with the glory, hu davar hataloi bekesher. But the fact that the tefillin encircle the head like a tiara or like a crown, this depends on the kesher. This depends on the knot. Shehu hagoyrim shaharitzuis v'chein hatfilin tiyena muhudokais ala roish, because it's the knot that keeps the tefillin firmly affixed on the head. Dalet. Okay, that's one level of explanation. But the Rebbe says, Amnam, however, adayin tzarich lahavim b'pnimius hinyanim. but we still have to understand this on a deeper level. Okay, the Rebbe answered all the questions, but he says, but now let's go deeper. Me'achar shemilui bakashas Moshe hareini nas kvadecha al kaponim ba'ofen v're'isa sachayre ba biyachad u'ba b'ashah shalimdoi HaKadosh Baruch Hu seder tefillah damiris yud gimel midas harachamim. Because the fulfillment of Moshe's request, please let me see your glory. And this came to fruition through his seeing Hashem's back, as it were. But because all of this comes in connection with Hashem teaching Moshe the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, Harei bevadai ein ze inyan study. So it is definitely not, something that's just kind of secondary, like an appendix. It's not marginal, not peripheral. Kishalime des Moshe seder bakashas rachamim heirohu es kvoida yisbar b'fchinas arakoyrai. That when Hashem taught Moshe seder bakashas rachamim, the order of asking for Hashem's mercy for eternity, that at the same time Hashem showed him his back, achoyrai. Ela zeu inyan ikri b'seder bakashas rachamim. But rather, yeah.
Can we stop for a minute and go back to the point? What are the points? I'm trying to get the continuity here. The points that the Rebbe makes, the points that he answers, and now he's going more than that.
Okay, so the question was, what is Rashi hoping to teach the Mechamish Lemikra by supplying something as an explanation that seems, if anything, more difficult to decode? Because to say a face or a back, no, we understand that Hashem doesn't have a physical face, Hashem doesn't have a physical back, but we can understand that one is a more manifest revelation, because when you look at the face of a person, you could see really important things about them. When you look at the back of a person, you know, sometimes you can't decipher who it is from the back. That's how little you could understand about the person from their back. So if in general Rashi is not bothered by these kinds of terminologies in the Torah, which they're all over the Torah, Hashem flaring his nostrils, Hashem's hand, Hashem's pinky, whatever it is, there's so many of these, and in general Rashi doesn't feel compelled. And right here in this inyan, Rashi doesn't say anything about what it means to see Hashem's face. So if he does feel compelled, what did he explain and what did he add by saying the Kesher Shel Tefillin? If anything, that's more abstruse. It's more difficult to understand. And then the Rebbe asked another question, which is, why does Rashi bring down from the pasuk seemingly a word into the Dibur HaMaschil that doesn't seem to be the focus of his explanation, and that is the word Vira Isa. He doesn't just bring down the word Acherai, he brings down Vira Isa. And in his explanation, he doesn't just bring down Kesher Shel Tefillin, he brings down the word Herahu, he showed him. So those are the questions. So the Rebbe explains that the question that's lurking here that Rashi wants to explain is, what exactly did Moshe see? In other words, how was this a special manifestation of the Eibishter's glory? If earlier Rashi already told us that the Eibishter is wrapped in a talus, and Bechlal, when a person's wrapped in a talus, you mamish can't see anything of them. And then the Rebbe even says that it's one thing would be if you would say that the talus is made out of very special materials that enhance the person's figure or the contours of the person's body, but talus generally means something very made out of wool, something very kind of everyday and simple. That's why he brings down that Hashem showed him something. And what did he show him? He showed him tefillin. And tefillin is always connected with yakar and kavod. It's always connected with something that is splendorous and glorious. And that's what he brings out. He showed him, meaning that the Eibishter uncovered his knot so that Moshe should be able to see it. And what's the greatness of the knot? Why not the ritzois? Why the kesher? Because it's the kesher that keeps the tefillin like a crown around the head in its place where it has to be affixed. It keeps it firmly affixed on the head. So that was the first part of the Sikha, asking those questions and explaining every single word of Rashi, how it's seminal to understanding what's going on here.
Okay, thank you.
Now, as Esther, is there anything that's still like bothering you, or that was just wanted that recap? Okay.
I have to unmute. It takes a minute. No, it's good.
No
Great.
problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So now the Rebbe says, but we have to understand B'pnimis and Yonim, what's going on here. So once we understand that this special revelation came in consonance with Hashem teaching Moshe the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, then for sure the Rebbe says in the next paragraph, Ein ze inyan study. It's not a sidebar. It's not something tangential. It's absolutely crucial. Elazehu inyan ikri b'seida b'kashas rachamim. It's something absolutely pivotal. Kidei shehalimud b'seida b'kashas rachamim yeh b'shleimus. In order for Moshe to learn the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim completely, Hutzrach liskayim b'shas ma'isa v're'isa sachayrai herohu kesher shel tefillin. So there had to be that at the same time that Hashem taught him the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, there had to be that he showed him the kesher shel tefillin. The Yuvan, and we'll understand this. Bahaktim habir bazeh shaseder tefillah hu ba'ofen deroya oisi mu'uta v'kari Yud Gimel Midas. And we'll understand this through first prefacing that the Seder HaTfilah was in a way where Moshe sees Hashem wrapped in a talus. And he's wrapped in a talus, and he's saying, "You give him midas rachamim." D'lechayra ain't move on. Seemingly, this is not understood. Ikar inyan hatfilah harehu amiris yud gimel midas rachamim. Shehein pay alois hakiyum d'v'chanoisi v'rechamti. It would seem that the main focus would be on the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, and it is those Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim that can effect Hashem's grace and mercy, etc. Umadua nochot sheyeh ha'omer me'utav dafka. Why is it necessary that the one who articulates his Yud Gimel Midas should be wrapped in a talus? Why is that so crucial? Hey, and we might say the following is one of the explanations. Klalus inyan hachet shatfila v'esayros harachamim hi kedei lehinotzel me'einshay. Very generally, the concept of sin, which this particular tefillah and in general tefillah is about arousing mercy to be spared the punishment that visits upon us after a sin. So the Rebbe says that generally, the concept of chet, nigram me'inyan hashikha, is caused by forgetfulness. Dechlalos inyan hashikha nimshach me'aklipa, ma she'en kein b'tzad hakdusha, ein shikha lifnei kisei kvodecha. All forgetfulness comes from klipa. In contradistinction, on the side of holiness, as it says in Gemara Brachas, there is no forgetfulness before your seat of glory. Now the Rebbe explains, B'nei Yisrael, harehem ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. Right? Famous Gemara that B'nei Yisrael are believers, the children of believers. Kol echad maimin be'emes asher bereishis bar Elokim shemayim ba'aretz v'chol tzva'ehem v'asher HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechadesh b'tuvay b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereishis. Every Jew believes that Hashem created the world, the heaven and the earth, and all of its hosts, and that Hashem renews in his goodness the universe every single day on a constant basis. Shebechol yom ubechol rega, every day, every moment, mechadesh Hashem yizbarech mechodash es habriya kula. Hashem completely recreates the world at every nanomoment. From what? Me'ayin ve'efes hamuchlot mamish. From complete nothingness. Kehemshach divrei Rabbeinu Hazakim Betanya, k'moy lifnei sheshis mei bereishis mamash. The world is recreated at every moment, like before sheshis mei bereishis, from the same nothingness that preceded the creation the first time. V'yesh lishol. So we have to ask, Kishe Yehudi makir u'margish. When a Jew recognizes and feels shebechol rega nivrahu mechadash al yidei Kadosh Baruch Hu, that at every moment she is being created again by Hashem. Ukeshavar rega niskaku shuv lidvar Hashem sheyichadish es mesiyosei me'ayin liyesh. And after one moment elapses, he will need again the words of Hashem to renew his existence from nothing to somethingness. So how is it possible? Even if, God forbid, this Jew is a tremendous Baal Taiva, has tremendous lusts and a yen for things that trespass Hashem's words. But how is it possible? How is it possible that he would not fulfill Hashem's will? Which would mean shaloi lemale is tavasei shaloi. It means that he doesn't fulfill his desires. Asher bo yizbarach taloi kol mitziyosei. If he knows and he recognizes and he feels that Hashem is recreating him every moment, which means that he understands and he feels that his entire existence is linked up with Hashem completely. So how is it possible that he won't fulfill Hashem's will berega zeh mamash, in this very moment? Yachadim ta'avasai, irrespective of the fact that he has taivas. But if he knows that his entire existence hinges on Hashem's word, that there's nothing and he's nothing and all of his taivas is nothing, if not for Hashem recreating the world every moment, how is it possible for there to be this disconnect? And even if he imagines, or the way he perceives it with his eyes, that he finds himself in a situation with so many obstacles and so many things that are preventing him from serving Hashem, and so many things that are bothering him from serving Hashem. But he knows, mamin ben mamin. But because a Jew is a believer, the child of a believer, he knows bivadaos gimura, with complete confidence and complete assurance. Shagam hadvarim hama'akvim atzmam. Shagam hadvarim hama'akvim atzmam. That even these things, these very things that seem to be preventing him from serving Hashem, nivru al yedei HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'rega zeh me'ayin ve'efes hamuchlot mamash. They were created by Hashem in this moment from the nothingness, k'moy lifnei sheshis mei bereishis mamash. They were created from the same nothingness that preceded creation, uvachein, and therefore lo yitachein shehem be'emes hefach ritzayin Hashem. It's a meichadik thing here. The Rebbe is saying, how is it possible for you to be cowed or or wowed by something and see it as an obstacle when they recognize that the Eibishter just created that a moment ago. So if the Eibishter just created this, it can't really be a prevention to anything having to do with Yadus. It can't be a prevention l'rtzonei yisbarach. It cannot be something that is an obstacle to Hashem's will. In berega zeh nivru al yedei HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'atzmai. Hashem just created it, and hakol bara l'chvoidei, then it has to be that it only seems like it's an obstacle, but it's not actually an obstacle. Vim kain, and if so,
Where does the question mark over
go
here?
ahead.
No, I'm saying it ends off the paragraph. It's ending off with a question mark.
Yeah, that's the question. How could a yid, for even one moment, believe something to actually be? The earlier question was, how can a yid separate himself from the Eibishter's Ratzon when he knows that his very existence hinges on Hashem every moment in time? Like when we know that we are at the favor of somebody, at their whim, we try to stay on their good side. So if a Yid knows this with every fiber of their being, how could they disconnect themselves from the Eibishter? So the Rebbe says, so now you're going to come and you're going to say, but there's all of these things in the world that prevent me. And that's why it's impossible. There's all these speed bumps. There's all these obstacles. I can't. So the Rebbe says, but he knows that everything is created every moment in time from nothingness. So it must be that these things that he is claiming are preventative factors are not. It can't be. Ve'im kain, and so if so, ketzat titachein mitzius shel Yehudi hamisnaik shaloi al pima sheidiyasei habrura mechayeves. So how do we explain the existence of a Jew who acts contrary to what is very clearly understood? How does he act so contrary to what logic compels? Logic compels, if you understand who you are and you understand upon what you hinge, then you will recognize that force and you will remain in alignment. How is it possible? Of course he knows, but in that moment he forgets. Shikha. But when the concept of remembrance exists for this Jew, kidboi, properly, then all of these other things that appear as obstacles that this Jew is claiming, what should I do? I have all these obstacles, they all kind of disappear. And then he is able to fulfill Torah and mitzvah properly, completely. And so completely that everything that he does, not just mitzvahs, but everything that he does is done l'shem shamayim. And in every one of his ways, it is clear that he knows Hashem. Without there arising in his heart any external thoughts, anything that's not part of what the Eibishter wants from him.
So can I ask a question? It seems like this whole concept is like predicated on the idea that you would know something and then you need to remember it. And clearly, like, obviously we struggle with this because, even if we know it, we don't remember it. But what about the idea that if this is such a struggle for us who knows it and forgets it, what about the thousands of Jews who don't, if you want to say know it? Is the Rebbe saying that they know it in their neshamas and that's why it's effective? Or is this like an actual knowing in practicality?
So go back to the second paragraph in Sif Hey. B'nai Yisrael harehi ma'aminim b'nai ma'aminim. The Rebbe is not differentiating. Now, of course, what you're saying is true. You know, that the more you learn and the more you're exposed and the more you have the privilege of learning, hopefully, hopefully, the more it sinks in and the harder it is to forget. But the Rebbe begins by saying, Yisrael ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. This is true of every Yid.
So it's just built in.
It's in our DNA. It's congenital.
Harder for people 50 years and older because we have easier, we forget things a little bit more. So maybe, and that's also part of Hashem's plan, that when you age, you start forgetting things. So I
Well,
guess
maybe it's
I don't
easier
think it's
because
that
you've been
kind of
practicing for so long.
Exactly.
Right. You have a better understanding of over 40.
Right.
I'm looking forward to being 40 just for that.
I don't know.
It only gets better, Sarah. Yeah, so I don't think it's talking about that, but I think Rachi brought that in there, Tzachos.
Rivky, where does laziness and a lack of enthusiasm or a lack of, it's not that you're forgetting it, you might even know it, but you just don't do it because you put other things into the picture that are, sort of irrelevant, excuses, whatever, and you don't have the chayas to do it.
So I thank you for the question, because I think it allows us to deepen this idea. What does remembering really mean? Or what is it code for? It means that it's important. And when something is important, you're not lazy about it. I should say, when it's important to you, you're not lazy about it. So, like, people don't forget to come to their own weddings. They're not too lazy to come to their own wedding. People don't forget to pick up a check for $10 million that they won in a lottery. Adults don't forget to go to the bathroom. Some of us don't forget to eat. Like, there's certain things that you don't forget. But what that really is saying is they are too important. They are non-negotiable. And then there are things that we can't forget. So to use, like, I think, contemporary language, I think what it's saying is, what is the priority? Because whatever you prioritize, you're not going to forget. So whether you forget mamish or you're lazy to do it, I think it's all part of a larger thing, which is what is going to be remembered, which means what is going to take prominence, what's going to be in position number one on your front burner. Laziness, forgetfulness, pushing it off, procrastination, it's all different iterations of the same thing. Because nobody's going to say, oh, well, I'm too lazy to take my child to the emergency room now. It's not a thing. Could be too lazy to start Pesach cleaning or I don't know, organize your spices. That's verstehe, Especially because every time I organize my spices, within 2 hours, they are disorganized, just saying. Sorry, you were saying something much more important.
The thing that also comes to mind, which is interesting, and we talk about laziness, but is stress. Stress causes us to, it affects memories. Stress very much affects memory. You lose memory, causes, I think, loss of memory cells. And we're always told that stress is no good, blah, blah, blah. But when you read with the Sikha here, what the Rebbe is saying is that if you remember it every single minute, that it's the Eibishter, and he's making it happen, and every single second, then where's the stress coming from? And that is directly connected to forgetfulness, to shichach also, which the sikha is talking about. So I just find it fascinating that this concept of knowing that the Eibishter is doing this every single minute, or it's coming from the Eibishter, should lessen our stress. And therefore our forgetfulness will not happen as much. Anyway, that's just the point that I'm taking out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like to Rochi's point, and to your point, Esther, I wonder if this is talking about like actual forgetfulness, or more of a lackadaisical, attitude towards something, like again, like lack of it being important.
It could be, but the fact is that lack of it being important causes us maybe to be flippant or whatever about certain mitzvahs, but stress actually causes us to, that affects Amunah even also. It's just and it affects us even in some way tremendously. I don't know, this is just the way I'm,
Right.
anyway.
Right, but Esther, I think what's going on is that the Rebbe is giving the baseline, better said, that this is the way it should be, and this is the way what it is. Now, if there are minuyim and ekuvim that are also created by Hashem, so then you know what? Take care of those minuyim and ekuvim. Take care of the stress. Take care of your ADHD that causes you to be procrastinator. That's what I think.
I don't know, we're dealing with October 7th. I mean, we're dealing with huge issues now. That you have to remember that the Eibishter made this happen, and this is part of the picture. And you have to be a maimin b'nei ma'aminim.
Right.
It's a huge
The
deal.
sikha is a good thing to remind us.
Tzipa wrote, I think this is the way which Hashem pre-programmed us. This is the entire dynamic of creation. Hashem is hidden, and we have to struggle to bring him to our consciousness.
Very good.
Yeah, and remember every moment who we are, what we are, why we are.
It just seems like this is because it, like the way the Rebbe is saying that it's something that we are created this way. It's almost like our default mode. So we can always go back to that, which is so different than creating it in ourselves, which is sometimes how we think we have to do it. Like we have to create something from nothing, where really the Rebbe is saying it's there. It's like you have it as your default and you just have to kind of refresh
just have to
it.
remember. You just have to remember.
Right.
That when you're standing lifnei kisei kavadecha, there's no forgetting.
I think it's interesting how
Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, he had this taina, why did you write, what's real in the books and what's
Tiny book, yeah.
exactly. I mean,
But it's interesting that we have this like negativity bias that we remember negative things so that we don't do them again. But somehow if this is like programmed into us, we don't seem to naturally remember it. We have to work so hard to remember it. And I don't know, maybe that's just because we have to have b'cher chavshes.
Yeah, it's the same meaning that Rachi brought up with the whole Torah. It's in a tiny book, and the whole world is full of taivas, or the fact that our nefesh elokי comes in later after our nefesh Bahamas has already has made itself very comfortable, etc. But you know what? I just remember now. I got like this flashback of the announcement that used to be made in 770 by the Yamim Neiraim. The Gabbai used to knock on the stender and say, I'll first say in Yiddish and I'll translate. Jeder soll gedenken, wo man steht und vor wem man steht. He urged everybody to remember where we're standing and before whom we are standing. But how many sichos does the Rebbe say that the first halach in the whole Shulchan Aruch is Shivisi Hashem lenegdi summit? That a Yid has to get up and remember that Hashem is always standing before me. And how would our lives look different if we remembered that every moment?
So I once had a class, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it stuck with me forever. And I'm going to use the wrong terminology. So
Tony, usually women don't tell their age, and you're telling us that you're
well, first
forever.
of all, I'm one of the elder chassid, not elder women on this class. So so the class was not which is I guess the worst Jew, but I don't really know the word. The anshat, this is the person who who just tears the toilet paper, or the person who Shomer Shabbos and forgets that it's Shabbos and tears the toilet paper. It's the person who Shomer Shabbos and forgets. You don't forget. It sticks with me in many, many things. Person who doesn't know, but the person who knows and forgets.
Reb explains this on why ashram talui, when you bring a carbon for something that maybe you did the avera, rather than the carbon that you have to bring when you know with certainty that you brought avera. Why do you have to bring a more expensive carbon for the maybe? Because vasei some maybe. Why? How could it be that it's something that the Eibush told you not to do? Maybe you did eat the chaylev. Like, in other words, why didn't you put the precautions in place that you wouldn't eat the fat of an animal that you're not allowed to eat? There's no, it's exactly what Joni just said.
Or if you did, you have to know you did it. How could you have done something wrong and not even know that you did something wrong? Like you're not even aware of it?
Exactly. Wasn't important enough. And that's why it takes a higher level of tshuva. V'zeu hatam l'kach shebe'eis amiras yud gimel midas yesh liyos atuf. And that's why when you come before the Eibishter to evoke rachamim and you say the 13 midas of rachamim, then there has to be the inyan of being wrapped bitalis, ulefi perish Rashi kan gam bitfilin. You have to be enclosed or enwrapped in a talis and tefillin. Why? Lefi sheteichnan shel beis mitzvahs elu kasher le'inyan hazikaron, because both of these mitzvahs are connected with remembrance. Very isam oisam uzachartam. The Torah says about tzitzis, because talis is really the mitzvah of tzitzis, you will see them and you will remember. And about tefillin, it says, Vahayu, it will be a remembrance between your eyes. And that's why they are connected to, or they're adjacent to, the redressing, the fixing, and the uprooting of the sin, which is forgetfulness. And when you do that, hamevi lekiyum v'chanoisi v'richamti, and this will bring to Hashem being gracious and having mercy on us. Vav, al pi hanal, based on the above, tuvan gam hashayches deher ohu kesher shel tefillin. And now we can understand on a deeper level, because we understood on the first level was that the kesher is what keeps the crown of the tefillin in place. But now the Rebbe is drilling down again on the word kesher. What's the connection between kesher, the not dafka, l'seida bakashas rachamim, to asking for Hashem's mercy through these Yud Gimel Midas? And he says, b'zayhar b'parshasenu, in the Zayar in our parsha, Isa, she'abchiyav Reb Yosi kashru ksharim kedei shelo yishkachu as divrei haTorah sheshamu, that Reb Chia and Reb Yosi used to make knots as a device for not forgetting Torah that they heard. V'isa b'achareinim, and the Achareinim explain shezeu gam hamakar b'Torah laha da amri inshe, that people say she'asiyas kesher he eitza shaloi lishkoyach davar shoitzim lezachrei, that this is the source in Torah for those that say that making a knot is is efficacious to not forgetting things that you want to remember. Mahi hashaychos tiksharim le'inyan hazikaron. What's the connection between knotting and remembering? Yesh levar zois al pi hamavor be'igeres hatshuva. One can explain this through what is explained in the Tanya Nigeres HaTshuva, B'Perish Maimer Chazal, in explaining what Chazal say, Adam Avar Avera Chule, Ma Yasa V'Yichya, Im hayarogil likres daf echad yikari beis dapim kuli. That Chazal tell us that what should a person do who trespassed, he did an avera, what should he do that he should live? If he used to learn one page, he should learn 2 pages, meaning he should double down on doing good things, and that will redress the avera. Shazehu, so Alter Rebbe explained, Shazehu kimashal hachevel hanifsak. This is an analogy for a cord that was cut or torn. And what do? You knot the 2 pieces together, and at the place where it's knotted, there the cord is stronger, doubly as strong as usual. V'hainu she'inyan hakesher beruchnius hu chibor v'hiskashrus be'inyan mesuyim bekesher amitz v'chazok b'harbe. That spiritually speaking, the connection to something with a knot is a manifestation of a very strong, a much stronger connection. So the default connection is the cord. The very strong connection is the place where the cord was cut and then knotted. And that's why knotting something, euphemistically, meaning doubling what you did. So if normally you had one level of how much you learned or how carefully you did a certain mitzvah, but what's the eitzah to redress that if there was chalila a trespass, is to double down on that. And that is the idea of a knot. And by the place of the knot, that's where it's strongest. And that's why this causes a repair for a sin. And when a person connects himself to Kedusha, not just in a regular way, but with a kesher, with a knot, then it's not shaykh. It's just not possible for there to be forgetfulness. Shehi hasiba lachatayim kanal. And forgetfulness is what leads to the possibility for sin in the first place. And now to take it more spiritually, shekesher ruchni mivatel es hashaychus el aklipa mokar hashikha. That when you create this knot to spirituality, or you create this spiritual knot with Hashem, then you obviate the possibility of connection to klipa. And klipa is the source of the forgetfulness. And once you do this, from creating this knot spiritually, nishtal shel achar kach gam begashmias, she'asiyas kesher gashmi, misayas levatel shikha kapshute. And afterwards, what devolves from this is that physically, making a physical knot helps to not forget. Literally, to not forget. Zayin. V'zui gam hashayches de'inin v'ra'isas ha'chayrai, her ohu kesher shel tefillin. So this is the connection between what Hashem showed Moshe, that he showed him the knot of the tefillin, l'seder bakashas rachamim, to the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim. B'shah shelimed HaKadosh Baruch Hu es Moshe seder bakashas rachamim, hapoel tikun achet. At the same time that Hashem taught Moshe the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, which effectuate repair and fixing a sin, her ohu Hashem showed Moshe as teichen ha'inyin v'tikun hachet, He showed him how you can be mitaken, how you can repair, how you can redress sin in the most general manner. Haba al yedei kesher shel tefillin. This comes from the kesher shel tefillin, which euphemistically represents his kashrus chazaka, very, very strong connection, kesher v'zikaron shel tefillin. Tefillin here is a placeholder for kedusha. ובפרט בכך שהכל מסחדיש בכל רגע על ידי הקדוש ברוך הוא. And especially when we remember that everything is created again, every moment by Hashem. ועל ידי זה, and through this, hazehirus meshikha, through being very careful with not forgetting, al yedei zechira kediboi b'chol inyanim tikdusha v'yados, and what's the way to be very careful that one shouldn't forget? By remembering properly everything having to do with Kedusha and Yadus. Niske bekarav l'kiyum hayud v'nigla k'ved Hashem v'ra'u kol basar yachtav k'pi Hashem diber. Through this, we will merit that very soon we will have the fulfillment of the promise that the glory of Hashem will be revealed. V'ra'u, and we will see, all flesh will see together that Hashem speaks. Va'azai, and then loy nizdake klal le'inin hazikaron, and then we will no longer need to remember. Ki nira be'einenu ech kol habriya kol basar mishave b'chol rega al yidei pi Hashem diber. We will see with our eyes. We won't have to remember. You only have to remember something that's not in front of you at that moment. We will see with our eyes that kol basar, that all flesh, kol habriya, the entire creation, is brought into existence at every moment through pi Hashem diber, through the word of Hashem that Hashem speaks, me'ayin ve'efes hamuchlot mamash, from complete nothingness. And this will be Bevias Mashiach Tzedkenu, Yavai V'yigalenu, V'yelichenu, Kememios La'artzenu, B'mheira B'yameinu Mamash. He should come, he should redeem us, he should bring us in upright fashion to our land, speedily in our days, Mamash. Again, we're asking for a for Shlema, for Harav Yaakov Tuvia, Ben Chava Gittel. We're asking for a for Shlema for all those who were wounded in this current war, for the return home safe and sound in body and mind and spirit of all those who were abducted, that there should be Shalom al Yisrael. Yeah, the